On this episode, we find out what happens when I hit this button. Hey everybody, and welcome to Finish Friday, the show that helps more creative people change more lives. I'm your host, Todd B. from Tennessee, and I created the show because on a scale of 1 to walking through downtown Nashville these days, creating things is hard, and finishing those things is even harder. Yeah, I guess it's because I grew up here. Last week we went with an Irish friend to visit downtown Nashville. She's always wanted to see it, and I'm like this place is nothing like I remember it. And I realize I sound like an old man here, but I'm like, where did all these people come from? Like, what are you doing here? Anyways, passing over my old Southern man complaints, I have a couple pieces of news to share with you guys. The first is my latest post on Medium is absolutely killing it, and it's called The Ultimate Survival Guide to Not Fitting In. I would love to know what you guys think of this. It's gotten a lot of good feedback so far, and you guys should read it as well. The second thing is that the early notification list for my new book, The Unstoppable Creative, coming out November 9th, is available right here. It's like the first link you'll see down there. And I need you to sign up. If you've even thought about getting the book, put your email address in here so at least you have the link the day that it goes live so you know where and when to get it. And that's all for me in my life. Let's get into today's topic. Humans adapt to our environment. It's not really the other way around. So what happens is we're born and it's not necessarily a blank slate, but we're starting with pretty much nothing there. And most of how we act, how we behave, what we believe comes from how we're raised and the kind of things that we see in our environment. So how intense does this get, and what does it mean for art? There's a study back in 2007 where they took a couple groups of people and they put them in rooms and asked them to make connections between seemingly unrelated objects. But there was a little difference. In one of the rooms, the ceilings were 2 feet higher. And what they found was that the people in the room with the higher ceilings were able to create more connections between the unrelated objects. They were able to think more creatively and more broadly just because of the room they were in. And that's just the beginning. That's just the physical environment. What about your mental environment, the kind of things that you're thinking about yourself every day? Do you even deserve to do good work in your mind? You got to jump over that hurdle. And then there's the social environment. What kind of people are you hanging around? Are they conducive to doing what it is you want to do in life? And so this week, I want to encourage you to take a look at your environment, not your effort, right? Because sometimes a small tweak to whatever we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis will get you much better art with the same amount of effort. Speaking of adapting to our environment, this is like the coldest room in the house that I shoot this show in. And so it's finally like fall/winter weather down here in Tennessee. So if you see me like shivering or my lips turn blue or something, you'll know what went down. This week's question of the week comes from WhatsApp. And William asks, when you started your career as a writer, did you immediately start a blog site or did you blog on hosted sites like Medium? William, I've kind of taken apart a little bit of my Medium journey on a previous episode of the show, so I'm going to take it back a little further here. The place my writing career really started was in a tiny little newsroom in East Tennessee, right? Like I wrote for a college newspaper, and that's to me where everything really started. And back in those days, I had like no less than 3 people carving up my work and like taking it apart and putting it back together again to make it better, to make it more concise, to make it more accurate. And so I cannot overlook that part of this whole journey, right? And I think it's important in today's world where we're trying to like jump straight onto the platform and do some big thing, that it's like you got to have the talent first. You got to figure out how to do what you do well before you do anything else. And so my career personally, yeah, it started in those newsrooms, right? And we were in college My girlfriend at the time, wife now, Kate, she would go to work, and anytime she went to work, I went to work. Like, that was my thing. I had access to the newsroom. Anytime she was away, I would spend 6 or 7 hours in the newsroom writing whatever I felt like, trying to get better at what I did. And so I think with a career, when it comes to something you're looking at doing online, I would make extra sure that I have the ability to do something really, really well. And then, yeah, let's move on and start on one of those platforms. So for me, it was Medium. I started there. The blog came much later, but I think it's more important to build that craft, find the platform, and then you can expand and build some other blog sites and create your legacy. For this week's Artist Spotlight, I'm going to press this button and give you a clue who it is.
Man, I feel like a woman.
I have literally been waiting all week to do that. Like, as soon as the idea popped in my head, I was like, oh, that's going to be fun. Like, that's the song, right? Because that's what I think of when I think of the person in this week's Artist Spotlight, which is indeed Shania Twain. Back when I was in Nashville last weekend, we visited the Country Music Hall of Fame, and I couldn't help be sucked into her story. And throughout this past week, I've been researching and reading all of these other things that she went through. And so what happened with Shania, she's 18, right? And she starts to tour around Toronto and Ontario and Canada, right? She's making a name for herself up north. She's figuring out what it's like to perform on stage and sing these songs and be in front of people. And she's got all of this momentum, right? So for like 3 years, she does this. She tries to make something of herself. And then in November of 1987, her parents die in a car crash. So everything that she had worked so hard to build up to that point just kind of explodes into nothing. And she's got to figure out what to do with her life. What does she do with her life? She goes home and she raises her 3 little siblings that had yet to get through high school or become adults yet. So everything she had worked for up to that point has to go on pause for the rest of her life. And it's only after those siblings get out of the house and grow up and move on with their life that she thinks, okay, like, I guess I'll give this music thing another try. This is not the age of internet. Like, she can't just like go back to her however many followers and pick up again. No, she has to start from scratch. So what does she do? She moves down to Nashville and she tries to get a record deal. No parents, no backup plan, no nothing. And I want to read you this quote that I found when I'm looking everything up and trying to figure out more about what makes Shania tick. And she says this. She says, "Once I got to Nashville with a record deal, which was a miracle, I had no parents to call to say, it's not working out, or can you send a bit of money? I had no one to fall back on, and my new family was now the future." Guys, there's a reason we're talking about building your environment on this show and intentionally setting up the things that can make you successful, is because when you don't do that, life often does it for you. And in Shania's case, she knew what she wanted to be, so she could use those environmental cues to kind of fuel that fire. And this is what happens with a lot of celebrities, actually. They're just determined that they're going to be something, and they have a magnificent event or a tragedy that drives them to that top pole. And so this week, extra thinking on Shania's story, right, and how she used it to catapult herself into the spotlight. Thank you so much for watching episode 41. I love you guys so much. It's amazing to do this show every week. But before you go, answer this Ask the Audience. Every week I ask a question, you answer in the comments. And I want to ask, how do you feel about country music? I'm down here in the South. We're surrounded by it. I'm a fan. I like country music, and I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comments, and if you think someone else is wrong, feel free to start an argument, and I'll go clear the air down there. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'm Todd B. from Tennessee. Don't forget to thumbs up this show if you liked it, and I will talk with you next week.